Rev up your engines for the Mid-Michigan Biker Podcast with Big E. Proudly sponsored by Christensen Law, where bikers helping engine bikers is more than just a motto. It's our commitment to the biker community. Be sure to tune in and listen to the latest news and biker buzz. And for all your personal injury needs, be sure to contact the Christensen Law team at 248-900-9000. Welcome to the Mid-Michigan Biker Podcast, where the rubber meets the road and the tales of the ride unfold. I'm Big E, your guide on this two-wheeled adventure. Life is short, bikers, so let's get after it. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. Today I have a special guest. All my guests are special. Just remember that. I have Erin Doan in studio, and he is the local State Farm representative, and we're going to talk motorcycle insurance. Erin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Big E. From one Big E to another.
Yeah. All right. So we had the intake attorney from Christensen Law, my sponsor, in here, and he was telling us all kinds of stuff about the types of insurance that we need to make sure we had on our bikes and all of this and all of that. So I thought I would bring an expert in the insurance industry here to kind of help clear that up.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely go down the list and, try to make it, for the listeners, just as easy as possible and try to describe it in layman's terms. I definitely can help in that space.
Awesome. So you've been dealing with the insurance locally for quite some time.
21 years as an agent owner, 4 full-time staff people that work for me, licensed, and in fact, just made an offer for a 5th today.
Oh, wow.
Very excited.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I did have to file a claim last October when I hit a deer with my car. And you guys were awesome.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I think State Farm is doing still a good job. Just massive growth coming out of COVID in every category.
Yeah, I didn't have to wait around for my check, and it was just smooth and easy. So there's always that. Hopefully it's as smooth and easy with a bike.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you should have to need that, and hopefully you don't. But
yeah, I think it's one of those things we talk about, what's catastrophic. And so as a biker, what I would be thinking about is, okay, what's really going to wipe me off the face of the planet? If God forbid, right?
Right.
You have this really bad accident. What's literally going to happen? I want to make sure the company has money to take care of my situation. And I hope to God at that moment, I have the right coverage.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what we should for sure, dive into today is what does that look like? Each person's different.
Right.
So you kind of need to design it around that person. But there's some definite things that a lot of listeners we've noticed, and each niche of insurance kind of has their yeah, this is what I want, that's what I don't want, and sometimes can be a little stubborn. All right, Big E, let me just kind of put it that way.
Yeah,
I mean, right? So bikers can be like, yeah, no, we're not, no, Well, let me just kind of poke a few holes into that today.
All right.
Yeah. So where do you want to start, man? Just go down through some of the big ones.
Yeah, just start with some of the big stuff, and then we'll kind of
work our way through.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say for most people, it's, people think about physical damage coverage on their bike.
Right.
Okay. So real similar to car insurance. You got comprehensive, and collision. So how do you think of comprehensive for your bike? Well, you really think about anything besides collision.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. It really is that simple. Okay. It's like deer, windshields, fire, theft, vandalism. Okay.
Right.
You're literally take a rock chip, and of course with the deer, you're hoping going slow enough, right?
Definitely.
I mean,
yeah.
right? On a bike.
Definitely.
So
yeah.
I think that's not even, even if you got how much can bikes get to be now? I mean, I'm starting to lose track with inflation.
So the green one we just looked out there, it was $32,000.
Okay, so 32 grand is a real number, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's a brand new street glide right off the,
right at the
$32,000.
Okay, so 32 grand is a real number, and I would imagine a lot of the listeners are, a huge range, right? From income from maybe that per year to, several $100,000. You got doctors and dentists riding, right? Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so 32 grand, you're like, well, I mean, let's just say, God forbid, worst case scenario, you didn't have it insured. It might take you a long time, but you're going to be able to recover for that.
Yeah.
So what's bigger? Liability and medical.
Definitely.
It just is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Especially on a bike.
It is. And so people think, well, hold on, I'm not driving my 3/4 ton truck. There's a whole lot more liability there. Because if I, obviously get in an accident with a bike, it's a whole different story. I got the bigger vehicle, right? But it still can happen the other way around. Somebody crosses in front of you, never saw the bike, and they're a pedestrian, right? You smoke them.
Right.
It happens.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens? Well, in the state of Michigan, it's got to be a pretty big accident from an injury standpoint, and they're going to come after you. So they're going to get an attorney, and they're going to have to come after you for those damages to their body that you caused. And the attorney can speak more to this.
Right, yeah.
Than I can, right, coming up. But negligence is an issue. And so when is it negligence? Well, were you going too fast? Did you, for the situation, did you come around a corner and really should have saw that pedestrian? So what you want to do is you want to have insurance for those situations. That's a big one. If somebody is in the hospital because of you hitting them with your bike, and they literally can sue you, for your assets. So that means IRAs, savings, things are real estate that's not connected to your own property a lot of times. So it depends on how bad it is and how negligent you were found. You want to have good liability insurance on your bike.
Definitely. I never even thought about that. I always think about, well, I'm going to get hit by a car, or what if I get hit by a car? I never really thought about the liability of actually maybe hitting a pedestrian or,
Yeah. So or a bicyclist.
Yeah.
I mean, so anybody that's kind of moving, you think about it, it's somebody smaller than you, which I think most times bikers would think, absolutely, it's always the other way around.
Right.
Everybody's bigger than me on the roadway. Well, it's those others that aren't. Like, so you think about sometimes these kids on these scooters.
Oh, yeah.
Or
e-bikes are real popular.
Are huge right now. So they're crossing a road to go from one trail to the next. They got these big fat tire e-bikes, and they're hauling. And sometimes they don't, maintain of making that stop, crossing that trail that they should on their e-bike.
Yep.
And they're even on some of these dirt bike trails now because they have the e-bike backup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So all of a sudden you got more people that are doing that kind of thing that could cross your path. And, so the other thing I think people don't think about with liability is not only your assets, but just your income. And we talked a little bit about that off air.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So we're just talking about literally they could garnish your wages. So you don't have the assets, but you were negligent on your bike. You really hurt somebody else. And let's face it, they got to come after you, in that situation because their life is changed. And they need some money to be able to kind of continue on. And so in that regard, that can be also a painful thing. Garnishing your wages, I've heard 20%.
Right.
For a certain number of years until those medical bills for that other person or the injury settlement is solved. And so, the attorney that you're going to have on will talk more in depth about when do they settle? How do they settle? Will they go above your liability limits? So for us in my agency at State Farm, we're looking at having $250,000 per person, $500,000 per accident. And a lot of times people will have what this thing is called an umbrella policy over top. So an umbrella policy gives you an extra $1 million of liability coverage. And so what happens, what that really means is you've got your autos, let's say, and your motorcycle and your homeowners. This umbrella gives you an extra $1 million minimum liability coverage in case you really hurt somebody with any of your vehicles.
Wow. Okay,
so it's a really economical way to go. A few $100 a year for covering over top of everything, no matter how that person got hurt. They were helping you trim your trees in your backyard, and they slipped off the ladder and they broke their back. That umbrella covers you for that too. And if it happened on the bike, it would cover you for that too. So it just depends on where, man, the dog's going.
I chuckle about that, but there was another podcast I was listening to, and there are two guys talking about motorcycles, and all of a sudden the guy's dogs are going nuts in the background.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it must be all right.
It's real. It happens. But not to confuse people too much, but the liability coverage is one of those things that it's pretty darn economical way to cover you for a major lawsuit and in case, just in case you're negligent. So we often talk about, my agency, and State Farm does, is about consequences and not probability. The probability of the listeners who ride bikes having that happen to them is low for any one person. However, sounds like an insurance guy. What if it is you?
Yeah.
What if it is you? You know, that's not the time to go, holy crap, do I have the right insurance?
Right.
Or not? You know, because a lot of people want to get on their bike. They want to get the state minimum. Give me 50, 150.
Yep.
That's now the state minimum. Used to be 20,000, 40,000, 10,000.
I think I have the minimum, and I didn't even realize it at the time. I think Harley did it like there was like a bronze package, a silver's package, and a gold package. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty much, I want my bike on the road, so let's do this. And
I just get me on the road, man.
So,
right.
And now I'm learning more about it, and my eyes are getting opened, and I'm thinking, I might need to up that coverage just a touch.
Yeah, I probably would. I mean, think about it. So there's another element. Like, let's say it happens and it's a little 3-year-old girl. She did not mean to cross your path.
Right.
And it happened. And, oh, by the way, because we live in we're mid-Michigan, there's a lot of rural areas, a lot of small towns. And if, let's say half or more of your riding is within the, county or two, you might know the family.
Right.
And so then it gets humanitarian, right? You know the family, you got $50,000. Man, I didn't mean to hit that 3-year-old girl. And the most they're going to go after you for in your policy is $50,000. Above that, they could go after more. Right. And that's what that'll freak a lot of listeners out.
And that's what I learned. And I'm like, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's liability insurance is cheap, man.
Well, and when Trish and I got married, we had our reception here. Mm-hmm. And we got an extra liability policy in case, there was drinking going on.
Yep.
If someone left here and we wanted to be covered.
We want to be protected.
Right.
That's
right.
a smart thing to do. And it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything to lose, right?
Right.
You're on SSI. I mean, no disrespect to those people.
Right.
But you're on SSI. You got really low income. You have no savings in the bank. You don't have a cottage or a hunting cabin. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I get 50, 150. But if you got a good job, you're making 30, 40, 50 grand or more a year. You got a little bit 401k money. You have 1 or 2 bikes, 3 bikes, 4 bikes. I'm telling you, man, all the bikes go. And everybody's like, no, you're not taking my bike over my friggin' dead body.
I know. Like, I always told my wife, the only thing better than 1 Harley is 2. I now have 2, but one of them's a dog.
That's funny. So, yeah, that's kind of the liability area of things. And I think after that, the next big one is really, Eric, and we could dive even deeper in the liability, but I think people get the gist on that. Is the medical part. So I think there's I don't know what I want to say, a reluctance or and it's not really ignorance. It's more of just like, I don't want to deal with it. Get me my insurance so I get my bike and get on the road and get me out of this office.
Right.
So you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty. Like I said, we were at Harley. It's like, well, that bike ain't leaving here until it's insured. All right. So here, I'm picking this. Yep. I'm good.
Good. Now can we leave?
Now can I leave?
Yeah.
Yep.
So medical can be one of these things, Eric. It's just, so most listeners are going to have health insurance, right? One way or another, whether that's regular health insurance from work or that's Affordable Care Act, or that's Medicare, Medicaid even, right? That's got insurance from the government, right? So you got this insurance. The one thing is that if you'd have regular insurance or you can have a pretty big deductible. Right. And a lot of people go, Well, yeah, I guess I do now. Our family deductible is $2,500 or $5,000. And sometimes with the Affordable Care Act, there's people that have $15,000, $20,000 deductibles just to be able to have catastrophic health insurance. So the issue is the co-insurance, which means if you have an 80-20 plan from work, above your deductible, up to sometimes $10,000 or $20,000 above your deductible, you're going to have to pay 20%.
Yep.
So if you got a $5,000 deductible and then you have an 80-20 plan to the next 10,000, what that means is that next 10 grand, you got to pay another $2,000. So all of a sudden what was 5 is now 7,000. So, we highly encourage people to really get $20,000 of medical payment insurance on their motorcycle. I mean, that's the number.
Makes sense. Yeah,
This makes sense.
Yeah.
So, so tell me a little bit about like with your health insurance, if you don't mind sharing a little bit.
No, we have it at work.
Okay.
And my deductible is for Tricia and I, it's $7,200.
Okay, so there it is.
Yeah.
So just imagine if you got listeners that are going through this in their mind. They're going, okay, now you get in an accident, and you go, okay, I can recover. Yes, you can recover from $7,200, but how would that make you feel if that's what you had to pay?
Right. Yeah. You're gonna cry.
You're not gonna be happy because that $7,200 was going to go after maybe a new helmet, new equipment, something else related to the bike. Because these are people listening to our bike enthusiasts. Like that money was not supposed to go.
That was for bike parts. Harley parts aren't cheap.
I need that money back. But it could set you back for that year, if not 2 years, right? Depending on the listener, right? So I think it's in that mindset. Like, hey, if I got to pay an extra, $10-15 a month more, to have 20,000 of medical, that's at least going to get you, especially if you have group health insurance, to get you, through that situation, that emergency room visit, and have money to go toward that doesn't have to come out of your savings.
Right.
So, we talked off air too about like getting in a helicopter.
Yeah.
That
I know when I was 18, 19 years old, my dad had to get into a helicopter, and it was $30,000.
Yeah, and I'm sure right now that number's probably 50 to 75,000.
Yeah,
especially go to GR.
Yeah,
you got to go to Grand Rapids. From where we live, 100 miles away. You're spending, and people go, wait, $50,000 or more?
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's nuts. So just knowing that immediately, think about that number. You just blew by your deductible. And potentially, if you have co-insurance, all of that
gone.
And so
just getting to the hospital,
just getting there. Nothing else has happened. You're just getting there.
If you get right in the ambulance, I was in an accident when I was 18 years old, and I got an ambulance ride.
Mm-hmm.
I rode in the front seat,
and
it was still $850.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean. Yeah, that's real numbers. It's
real numbers.
30 years ago.
Yeah, so you just have to realize that it's like one of those things that make a decision which quickly you go, no, I've got health insurance. And I'm being the devil's advocate here, right? Is going, wait, come on, let's take a little time out here, take a deep breath, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think you're going to be a whole lot happier if it happens. Well, it's not going to happen to me. Okay, yeah. Let me just tell you that my office in Ludington, Michigan, State Farm agent, has over 500 claims a year. Okay. My office every single year pays now over $4 million back out into the community, whether that's through home insurance, auto insurance, disability, or life insurance.
Wow.
$4 million back into the community, dollars every year. So yes, it can be you, and more than likely it will be you. So you have to have insurance catastrophically mindset. Now, $7,200, maybe that's not your catastrophic, but for some people listening, for sure.
Right. Oh yeah.
It's going to be their catastrophic because, hey, they're getting by paycheck to paycheck, between, the two of you, you're making maybe 50, 60, 60 grand, and you're getting by, you're paying the bills, but it's tight, right?
Right.
$7,200 really going to,
it's going to hurt.
Crimp your style for sure. So yeah, those are probably the two biggest, Eric, related to really insurance that should be thought about from a catastrophic standpoint.
All right. So we talked with Jeremy a little bit about the helmet stuff, because in Michigan, you have the choice to wear a helmet. But if you make the choice to not wear that helmet, you're supposed to have a rider on your policy that allows you to do that because of obvious reasons. If you get into an accident without your helmet, chances are things are going to be worse for you than if you had your helmet. I know I'm going to get a little bit of blowback by a few people that said, well, according to some of the numbers, people with helmets on get more messed up. And I have heard that claim. I don't know how true it is, but so what does that look like? Say I'm in one of these bad accidents and I'm not wearing a helmet, but I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, I think for most people in that space is you're taking that risk on. So you remember how we were just talking about 7,200?
Right.
Okay, let's just jack that number up. So I would say, again, I can't speak unabashedly on this, if that's a nice fancy word to use, but I would say at least the $20,000 amount rule.
Yeah, and I think
that's the minimum you're supposed to have, and
right.
If you don't, my guess is you're going to be liable for that from whatever that situation that happens. And that's minimal, in terms of your medical bills. In fact, it could get this crazy where your health insurance company goes, wait, they didn't have the rider on their motorcycle insurance, not have a helmet. We're not paying the first 20.
See,
I mean, sit on that for a bit. We were talking about 7,200 a minute ago.
And that's kind of the direction I was going with that. That just kind of gives somebody's insurance company the ability to say, well, you're dumb. You were riding without a helmet. You know you're supposed to have this, and you didn't. And you were still riding without a helmet. We're not paying.
And I'm telling you that they will. And so years ago, I'm in my late 50s now, but I'll tell you years ago, if you got hurt on somebody else's property, your health insurance would basically take care of it. You go to the hospital, and they're going to take care of it through your own health insurance. Well, not anymore. You get hurt on somebody else's property, they're going to say, where did it happen? What happened? And whose house were you at? What's their name? What's their address?
Right.
Okay. Same thing going on here. So what I mean by that is my daughter went next door in the basement, and within about 6 months of each other, breaking her arm twice, doing gymnastics because she loved to do it when she was little.
Right.
Broke her arm twice. Our health insurance company didn't ask me. My daughter's 24. This is back when she was 4. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they're going to ask, where did it happen? And so then my next door neighbors, we would have had to file a claim on their homeowners policy.
Yep.
Right? And that's absolutely unequivocally happening virtually every time. Same thing here. Every insurance company is trying to basically keep the numbers tight. And if they don't owe, they're being tighter than ever before. If they owe, they got to pay. That's the contract. That's the law. That's why we have attorneys. If you owe based on the policy, you have to pay. If you don't, you're in violation of the contract and you're going to get in trouble.
Right.
Literally. But in this situation, you choose not to have the $20,000 endorsement. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance means you're going to start writing checks. And if you're young in your 20s and you don't know what a check looks like,
it's possible.
It's possible. What I mean by that is open up your wallet, man. And you're going to have to get your debit card out big time. So that 20 grand's a big deal. So that what it means, you got to have insurance coverage as a first party medical provider. So that means with us, if you had the $20,000 medical payment options on your motorcycle insurance, that having that as a rider, you're going to be covered and not, if you will, you can then not have to have your helmet on. But you have to be 21 years or older.
Right.
So everybody needs to know that. If you're under 21, that rule does not apply. You have got to wear a helmet.
Right.
Yeah.
That pretty much covers that.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, that's again, but some people might be listening or maybe thinking about getting a bike. Probably gets them into that space in their headspace. About like, oh, okay, yeah, there was some $20,000 rule. What is that rule when they're getting quotes for their motorcycle?
Right.
And
I don't know. When I called Harley to ask about it, so I wear a helmet.
Mm-hmm.
One time, we were here, we were getting ready to go for a ride. There was a group of us. and I was sitting on my bike, and everybody decided it was time to go.
Oh.
So they all got on their bikes, and we all took off. And I didn't even think about it. I didn't have my helmet on.
Okay.
I got to the corner here, and Tricia looks at me, and she gave me the death stare. Like, what are you doing with no helmet on? I'm like, oh, my God, I don't have my helmet on.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, what do you do? What do you do? You stop, you put your helmet on.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, well, and I think the older, if you will, sorry, age thing coming out here, but the older you get, the more you have to lose and the more you have to risk. I get it. You realize a little bit more of your own mortality.
Yeah.
But I'm telling, for the listeners again, 20s and 30-year-olds that are invincible, like, yeah, no, like, hey man, it's just literally going to ruin your whole life. And if nothing else, 20 grand set you back, for a while, especially if you're getting going and you're making 30-some thousand bucks a year. Man, 20 grand is a real number for when you're in that kind of income level.
Yeah. And all you got to do is watch some motorcycle videos with people crashing. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, the first thing that hits is their head.
Yeah. I mean, I got lucky with I spilled bike when I was 17, had a enduro, and a hairpin corner, just did not know, back then, no GPS, not knowing exactly all where we were going, and just came up on me on a dirt road, man, just had no idea. And I laid that thing down and I went flying, and that bike was coming right after me, and I had to roll out of the way to get out of the way of that bike. But, that was back in the day, and I did have a helmet on, so I can't imagine if that bike would have landed on my head, going around that dirt, and you know how it is riding a bike on the dirt.
Just about all of us started out riding enduros on the dirt.
Yeah.
So, and we've all laid them down.
Yeah, it's like everybody's laid those down. Yeah, we know what that feels like, but 45 mile an hour was not fun, man. I had road rash everywhere, bleeding everywhere. It was just a big mess.
Yeah, not fun at all.
Not at all.
All right, what else do we got to cover here?
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other insurances. I guess we could,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of how State Farm handles it.
Right.
You want to do that a minute?
Let's do that.
So, I mean, when we're looking at motorcycle insurance, we're really talking about, motorcycles factory built, trail bikes, licensed and registered, to be able to use them on public roadways, shall be insured and rated as a motorcycle. So we can also do mopeds. We actually can do an e-bike. So they're starting to get a little bit pricey.
Yeah.
So motor scooters, and motor, I guess, I don't even know what the difference is hardly, but motorized scooter would be another category that we can do. So sidecars are automatically covered with no additional premium if you do have a sidecar on your motorcycle. So except for motorized bicycles or mopeds, all vehicles designed for off-road use and not licensed registered for use on public roads should be insured under the recreational vehicle program for State Farm. So State Farm has a really good definition kind of description that's a little different by putting them on a rec vehicle. In fact, I talked on our local radio station today, about rec vehicles and some of those coverages. Just happened to do that today.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's fun. Just that there's a crossover here.
I'm going to have to listen to that.
I know you're going to have to listen to WMOM, and I'll give it a plug for them, 102.7 FM in Ludington. And they also got the Facebook and YouTube channel going for them. So just a little plug for WMOM. So on the there's also emergency roadside expenses. So if vehicle breaks down and you get it towed, what State Farm's going to do is tow it literally to the nearest place that can fix it. So sometimes that can be a little frustrating, especially with a bike, in that we're not going to pay if you're, in Gaylord to tow you all, for all the way back, especially if there's a place in Gaylord or on the way home that really could fix your bike.
Right.
If it's a specialized fix and you got to go to a Harley-Davidson dealership,
is one in Gaylord.
Is there one? That's funny I bring that up. But let's say, a different town, man, like you're in Alpena, I don't know, so you're in Mount Pleasant and you're listening and you're going like, well, whatever the
There's
nearest.
One in Mount Pleasant too.
I guess they're getting them everywhere now. So let's just say you're a long ways away and you need to go to the dealership, right?
Okay.
So let's just use that out there. We're going to pay for the nearest place that can fix it. If you can have, a local mechanic, and there is one in the area, that's what State Farm's going to pay for. And there are 2 extra coverages that are really great, I think, with State Farm, and that's protective gear expenses. So State Farm will pay for the loss of protective gear that occurs while such protective gear is being worn by a person who is occupying a covered vehicle. So, if you have protective gear on, we're going to pay for one loss up to $3,000. So That could be whatever protective gear, gloves or, your jackets, your pants, whatever you have on.
A friend of mine, his wife was in a bad accident. She hit a deer up in the UP. And, I mean, boots, gloves, helmet, all that stuff. That stuff adds up in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
You start buying, like, riding jeans. $150 is a starting point, and they go up
from there. Yeah.
Helmets. I mean, the sky's the limit on a helmet.
Yeah. So to have State Farm cover that, I think, is a nice extra gesture.
Yeah.
In that coverage, because all of a sudden these things start clicking away. Like, okay, I did it to the other person. There's a potential for lawsuit. Okay, I got hurt. Okay, I got to deal with that part of my motorcycle insurance. Okay, now I ruined my gear. I got that part of my insurance.
Yeah, you get your bike paid for, and like, okay, so I'm going to get a new bike. But now I got to replace all the gear.
You got to replace all the gear. Yeah. And so the other part of that can be is that it's nice is we'll pay up to $500 if you have, you get in an accident, vehicle is not drivable, and you need to, stay where you're at. So you've got to be, I'm trying to think it's got to be at least 50 miles away. So this happens. You can get transportation, you can get lodging, you can get meals paid for. If, again, your accident results in that motorcycle cannot be driven. So to have that coverage and have up to $500.
That's really nice. Yeah.
So, nice to pay because, hotels minimum, what, $150?
Yeah.
Or more now, it seems.
Easily.
Yeah. So,
especially in season.
Well, and in season, and if you're in Traverse City, you might as well double that or even double and a half that.
Yeah.
It's expensive when you get into the summer.
Yeah.
Here in Western and Central Michigan.
Yes. And we all like to travel, and usually when we're on our bikes, it's in season.
It is, yeah.
So
that makes a huge difference. Have that extra $500. So again, all these different dollars, and we've been talking about insurance. Just like, hey, what do I get when I get insurance? Well, there's some of these smaller things we've been talking about recently. These couple items,
right?
But they're nice. But also just remember, it's not about just getting on the road, right? It's really about taking a deep breath, stopping. Talking to an insurance agency like us at State Farm, my agency in Ludington, call Erin Doan, State Farm, and have the conversation with one of my licensed staff about, the liability coverage you really should have, based on your income and assets. Really make sure you really consider, even if you always wear your helmet, really consider the $20,000 medical payments for yourself,
right,
to help you pay for miscellaneous expenses, help you pay for your health insurance deductible, and help you pay for co-insurance if your policy has where you have to co-share some of your hospital and doctor expenses.
And I never really thought about the deductible. I'm not worried about that. I got that covered.
Mm-hmm.
But you were saying like the 80-20.
The 80-20. If your policy,
that can add up in a hurry.
If your health, and a lot of health insurance is that way.
Right.
It's not necessarily 100% after deductible.
Right.
In fact, I would argue that more than half are not.
Right.
So I'm talking about
look at your policy and make sure. Yeah.
Small, medium, large companies, it doesn't matter. You want to know from your human resources department, okay, what is my deductible and co-insurance, whether it's a car or motorcycle, or anything else?
Right.
Does it change?
It doesn't. Exactly right. It doesn't have to be on your bike. It could be in your car.
It could be in your car. In a car, it's going to take over a lot of that with the state of Michigan having personal injury protection. So that coverage in your car is going to be pretty tied down now with a new law that came out in July of 2020. In other words, the only reason that would be a problem, not to go too far off the car insurance way,
right?
But just so every listener knows, is that if you didn't have health insurance and you didn't have car insurance, you can, from the state of Michigan, get up to $250,000 if you're a Michigan resident. If you're not a Michigan resident, you don't even have that $250,000. But I can tell you that in a really bad accident, I've had 6 of them in my career in 21 years, well over $1 million.
Yeah, $250,000 is not
nothing. $250,000 is nothing. $1 million plus. I've had it 6 times in my career, and those are challenging claim situations. And I'm thankful that we could help them the way that we have. And a lot of those people were back in the day when it literally didn't matter. It was unlimited medical coming from your car insurance. Motorcycle, Eric, doesn't work that way.
No.
It's not covered under personal injury protection. You have to have it through your health insurance. And if you choose to, which I would highly encourage, is to get $20,000 on your bike for medical payments to yourself.
So we did talk a little bit about with Jeremy about the personal protection and the underinsured and uninsured motorist, and what was the best way to deal with. Again, you want your coverages to be.
I would say I like that number to match what you do for liability for others. So let's say the liability was for yourself on your bike was $250,000 if you hurt somebody else.
Right.
Bodily injury. Okay, that's your liability. It's called bodily injury. $500,000 per accident. Okay, so you hurt multiple people from your bike, which could happen if pedestrians, a group of kids crossing the street, school outing, right? I mean, worst case scenario. Insurance guys have to think worst case scenario because
that's going to be depressing.
These things happen and they're really sad, really, really sad. But you got to think worst case scenario. So $500,000 there, and so what does uninsured do and what does underinsured do? It's actually money coming back to you if that other party did not have any insurance, meaning uninsured, or they were underinsured. That other party should have had more than 50,000, 100,000, right? So you were in that situation and they were underinsured. Meaning in this case, State Farm would pay you the $250,000 option if you got really hurt by an uninsured person in that situation. So that can be huge to have that just as a backup. So I have one really good example on that situation where a guy got hit and that other party did not have insurance on his vehicle, and so they actually had to go back to their insurance company to file a claim to get paid for his pain and suffering because he literally could not be a teacher for an entire school year. It took him a year to recover.
Oh, I know who we were talking about.
Yeah, so he had to get that money back from his insurance company, and she used to work for me. His wife, in fact, it was the same month she started working for me.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so once that situation happened. They were able to finally, but it took a couple of years, and that can be frustrating because it's your own insurance company. Like, why is it taking them so long? Well, they want to see how you're recovering. They want to see the medical bills flowing through and what your status is as you're recovering before they'll make a final call on what they're going to pay you. That just seems to be the way that it is in the legal system. It can take 2 or 3 years for these things to settle out, but when they do, I had another situation where the lady hit a dad crossing the road. How we're talking about this. So lady hit that dad and shattered his leg. And so, he had to come after her. Luckily, she had an umbrella policy for $1 million above their liability limits on their vehicle. And State Farm wrote a check for, $800,000, $800,000. The good thing about that is that State Farm customer did not have to get their wages garnished.
Right.
They did not have to open up all their savings and have their 401k taken. They had good liability coverage on their vehicle, and they had an umbrella over top everything. Protected their liability economically, and it was a really smart thing to do because when that happened, it was not good, and that guy will never walk the way he used to, legitimately.
Right.
And it was good that we, this guy had the right coverage, and we wrote, we basically wrote the check. But it took 3 years for that to go through the court system.
Wow. So let me ask you this, because this is my situation. I mean, we insure our house, our camper, and our cars through you.
Mm-hmm.
Our bikes are not insured through you.
Sure.
So if I had an umbrella policy, that would not work on my bikes, or would it?
It would.
Oh, it would.
You have to have the liability coverage at $250, $500 minimum. So you would have to make that bump.
I would have
with
to bump
your
it
Harley
up.
Davidson
Right.
insurance, and you would send us the deck page every year.
Right.
So the umbrella is audited, kind of like workers' comp is.
Okay.
So if you're a small business owner or business owner, you know about workers' comp, and that gets audited based on how much you pay your employees.
Right.
It's the same thing with a personal umbrella policy. It's this $1 million of liability coverage policy, or minimum. Some people have assets where they need a $2 or $3 million or more policy.
Right.
They saved really well in retirement. They want to protect it all. I have a lot of customers with a $2 or $3 million umbrella because they've been saving for 40, 50 years.
Right.
Okay. They want that protected. So yeah, the umbrella, if you have your bikes insured somewhere else, but you have State Farm with everything else, at least the autos, we can write it. It's a little bit more money, but it's not outrageous.
Right.
But I would highly recommend that, anybody that's making $50,000 or more, has $50,000 or more, $100,000 in their 401k, whatever that number is, you really should have an umbrella nowadays. And the other element is, it used to be where you didn't have to worry about if somebody else didn't have health insurance or they didn't have car insurance. So let's just say that happens and they go above the $250,000 that the state will give them from a car accident. Well, the problem is if you hurt them, so let's say your motorcycle ran into the side of their car and they had the window open for whatever reason, it hit their head and they had head injuries, but it was your fault. It's kind of crazy to think. It's it's unlikely. It could happen. But you run it, you T-bone them with your motorcycle, and they've got to come after you. But for whatever reason, they did not have health insurance. They did not have that car insured, and they have head injuries, and they spend the entire $250,000 state offers for that situation. Any bills above $250,000, they have got to come after you. So having good liability coverage on your bike and really seriously considering having at least $1 million umbrella over top of your bikes and your cars and your house is a really, really, really good idea. It used to be in the state of Michigan before 2020, major injuries only, right? You think about those lawsuits are coming from that. Well, hold on. Now we also have lawsuits coming from people not making good choices, not having health insurance, and not having car insurance at the same time. But you did it to them.
Right.
That's the point.
Right.
They made a bad choice, and we're like, wait, I got to pay for their stupidity?
Yeah.
If you hurt them, you do.
It's
crazy, but that's the way it works.
Yeah. That's the world we live in.
It is. So sorry to make it too depressing, but hey, man, the thing I always tell people is if you got this coverage down and you have the right coverage, it's really one of those things you only need to think about every 2 or 3 years, maybe every 5 years. Have the right coverage at the right time. If you have savings, take bigger deductibles to offset that extra premium for having more catastrophic coverage.
Right.
Have the higher liability, have the better medical, have the better coverage on your house, God forbid, in case it burned to the ground. And just take bigger deductibles and offset the premium that way.
Yeah.
You can recover from, $500, $1,000, $2,000. It's just so much harder on the top side when you're talking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Makes good sense. Definitely makes good sense.
Cover the catastrophic.
All right. Well, thanks, Erin, for coming in and taking time out of your busy day. You were already on Mom today, so... Yeah,
man, I've had a busy day of being on air.
The Media Blast.
Media Blast Day is today. That's good. I really do enjoy it, and I'm comfortable in this space for sure.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And hopefully that answers a few more questions from our listeners, and I know I got some local listeners out there. You can always stop in and see Erin. And
we appreciate it. We're right on the highway, half a mile east of Meyer in Ludington, so on US 10.
And their office is great there. So, as a customer,
thanks,
who has had to deal with claim.
Well, good. I appreciate that.
They were awesome. They were very helpful. So definitely check them out if you're shopping for insurance, because I think pretty much everybody's insurance went up.
Oh yeah, the past year with car insurance, average was like 30%, and everybody's like, "Wait, is that State Farm?" No,
it's everybody.
Everybody's.
Yeah, I did have a discussion with my coworker about that today too.
It's everyone, and they all went up. And
my insurance went up $300 a year.
Like, what's going on? Yeah, literally it was from. Everybody knows, but it's the parts, the expenses of the parts, and a lot of these collision shops are leading techs, and a lot of them had to bump their pay $5-10 an hour.
Yeah.
So you're dealing and just literally what used to be like let's say in a car, I know it's a motorcycle podcast, but let's say in a car it was a $4,000 or $6,000 damage. That damage is now $12-15 grand. They're totaling it.
Yeah. Oh, that's what happened on my Edge.
They're totaling it.
I was like,
wait, what?
I hit a deer, and I'm like, okay, well, they'll fix it. You know?
Nope. Not anymore.
No.
And that's what's driving premium too.
And I'm like,
because it's too
much damage.
It's too expensive to fix it. They got to total it. And that's frustrating people, but you can buy it back. That's just a whole nother discussion for another podcast on your other show.
All right. Well, that's all I got for you today, listeners. Life is short, bikers, so get after it. Thanks for listening to the Mid-Michigan Biker Podcast. Have a good one, bikers. And remember, life is short, so get after it.